How does technology both help that and though hinder that? Because it removes us from the real object, the real thing, but at the same time it increases accessibility to many people in a way that they wouldn't have before.
I have love and hate relation to technology. Actually, first I hate technology. I think just the idea that they really rob us of our time, because I mean young kids, they don't have any other reality except technology. They don't even see each other, they don't communicate, they just text to each other. So it's like really something that becomes so non-human in a relationship. But at the same time, this is a great opportunity to communicate large amount of people and to communicate, different ideas through the globe. So we have to have some kind of right measure of technology. When we have to kind of take it and then own it and give ourselves free time, that we are not possessed by technology. So this is kind of my relationship to it.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to show, and again, we've got this, hopefully there's number 2 and 3, which is at MoMA with a child and with a man crying, or the two of those. And this is, some of that, what you were talking about, that personal interaction, that personal relation with the audience and such. Why do you think, is it partially that that slowing down which enabled viewers who came and stared across the table from you to have such a connection, to feel this connection?
There's so many things happening here. The first of all is, I set up the stage. And this was the 4 lights, which was really very important, like almost in a space, some kind of architectural, the marking the territory. Because you are in the hall of MoMA, which is like the most, passing the territory. Everybody's going to the cafeteria, going to the first level, second level, third level. So it's a complete restlessness, and there's no concentration. So I want to create a center with the eye of the tornado, which is really stillness. And then, the people, the waiting became part of the piece. People come and they just have to wait and wait. And then when they really come to sit at the chair in the front of me, they arrive there and then everything drops away. The sounds drops away. They're observed, they're filmed, they're photographed and observed by me. So they're nowhere to escape except to themselves. And then click the whole thing of the emotions. It's incredible, really. And then after this whole experience of 736 hours, the American scientists got really interested in me through the water mill, and Jorn Weisbrod really connect me to Sackler Foundation, and then later on the Russian scientist. So I experiment almost 1 year with AG caps on my brain to actually measure the waves and to see what is happening on the scientific level with the brain. Mm-hmm. And it's incredible. We are now creating this whole data because there is information subconsciously who goes from one person to another, especially for the non-verbal communication with a total stranger, which is quite incredible. So it's not just art. It's a lot of kind of elements that science can prove.
Well, that reminds me somewhat of Buddhists who have also, they've done brain experiments tracking the kind of brain waves that they have during deep meditation and how that's different, let's say, from other people. So maybe art can bring that same
I think that could be very interesting, more and more collaboration between science and technology and spirituality. It's, in some years ago, I was a part of that whole thing experiment when Francesco Varela, who was a neurophysician, actually got permission from His Holiness Dalai Lama to measure the monks in a scientific way under the meditation called Tumo, which they're sitting naked under, minus 30 degrees Celsius, freezing, just in the snow. And they can visualize the fire in their solar plexus, so they can rise the temperature in every part of the body, which actually science can't explain. So he was measuring this whole thing.
Actually, I write a little bit about those experiments in my book and how that is. But one thing I wanted to go back to just before we leave MoMA, you made a comment at some point that you were very, I think, annoyed with the institution, that you felt they kind of took advantage of you, ran over you, I think was the phrase that you used perhaps in the documentary. Is, even at this moment where this large institution is celebrating your work, is the artist still kind of always at a disadvantage
No, I was really making comparison between American institutions and European institutions per se, not specifically MoMA or anything. I have to say that our regulation about things in Europe is so much more flexible than in here. Here, you are suing everybody all the time for everything. It's crazy. So actually, there's so many important artworks could not be made in the museums in Europe if we will be made here because of restrictions. This is what I was telling. Because there's so many fire restrictions, whatever kind of restrictions, that nudity was another very complicated thing here, You really have a problem with nudity, which is in Europe we don't.
Well, there's this moment in the documentary, and I don't know how many people have seen this, but somebody where one of the people who've been waiting in line, a young woman, sits down, and right before she sits down, she takes off her dress, and immediately the security guards kind of form a phalanx around her.
I didn't even see her. That fast was the security guard.
Right. Now, would that have bothered you? Would you
absolutely
have been
not.
Absolutely fine for her to sit down?
No, absolutely not. But at the same time, you see, it's very tricky and complicated because, for every performance, you make actually instructions, and these instructions are very clear. You have supposed to come and sit and engage with the gaze in nonverbal communication with me. But in the same time, so many people could take this as advantage to actually create their own performance, which was not part of my piece. That's true. But if she comes, in the European Museum, she will probably sit there. In America, not. So that's the difference. But in a way, the piece actually didn't need that.
Right.
It was very simple instructions how should be done. But what really for me was interesting and really irritating was the reaction of the press. Especially the American press, on the piece upstairs that we had in Poderabilia, we have
the reperformance.
Yeah, the reperformance of the two nude people. They have to go in between. So this piece.
Just to explain that was a piece that you had performed years ago.
We don't have a slide.
That you had people that I think the slide showed earlier that you had other artists re-perform, essentially.
Yeah, but basically the piece I made with Ulay in 1977, and we was invited to be a part of the big, large performance festival in museum in Italy, in Bologna, and we had a very poetical idea that actually artists are the door of the museum. If the artists are not live and there's no work, there will not be museums in the world. So we rebuilt the main entrance of the museum and stood there naked, and the people have to pass between us. So the entrance was so narrow because we didn't have restrictions for wheelchairs or anything. We just had a narrow entrance. So you have to cross one side or another side, and then to face me on him. So we had something like, I don't know, we supposed to do this 6 hours, but after 3 hours, actually, we had police who pass facing me, and then on the other side ask us for the documents. We are naked, we don't have any documents. And then they forbid the performance. So this was European experience. Here, we have re-performance, and then, the all attention of the media for the first months went to this nudity, and then start really seeing the other things. But they didn't really analyze what is the meaning of the piece. The really poetry of idea of artists is the door of the museum.
Right.
It just was looking at the nudity, half erection, no erection, and all these things.
Right. Right, and actually which comes across very clearly in the documentary, it's that it was so much more about the live performance that the kind of nudity became an afterthought.
Completely,
it was nothing.
But also what was important here, it was really introducing re-performance. Because I done already in Guggenheim in 7 easy pieces, which I myself re-performed the performances from 70s. Right. And now I really ask the younger artists to do it. Right. And this was so important. And I have the most wonderful re-performance group, of the 46 people.
Now this is a controversial issue. There really is a split among artists whether this whole idea of re-performing, whether your own work or another artist's work is really valid, or whether it doesn't in some way really just contradict the whole notion of this moment of performance art. And you say yourself your own views have evolved on this over the years.
when in the beginning, the 70s, I made a statement very clear: no reperformance, no predicted end, no repetition. It was very clear. But then it was 70s, and then come 90s and 80s and 90s, where everybody was reperforming with giving you any credits: MTV, the fashion, the theater, the film. They were just picking up the elements of performance and making their own mixture and not putting the credit who really made it, which was so unfair to an entire group of performance artists who hardly have anything to live from. And now the fashion magazines will make such a huge amount of money reperforming with the fashion garments the performance. So I was thinking, okay, if this is happening, let's make new rules. Let's change the rules because the time's changing.